Quantum mechanics is a fundamental theory in physics used to explain phenomena involving matter and light at atomic scales. While classical mechanics works well enough to describe phenomena at the scale of objects in our daily life, such as people, billiard balls, cars, etc., the assumptions we make in classical mechanics simply do not hold true in the case of quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics gradually arose in the early 1900s due to an increasing number of observations that simply could not be reconciled with classical physics, such as the ultraviolet catastrophe or the photoelectric effect. In this video, we will investigate one of the main experiments often used to illustrate the quantum nature of light, the double slit experiment. Classical physics suggests that there are two types of fundamental objects, particles and waves. A particle is a localized bundle of energy and momentum. In the Lagrangian formalism, this particle can be described at any instant by generalized coordinate vector q and its time derivative. Similarly, in the Hamiltonian formalism, we describe this particle by q and its conjugate momentum p. The dynamics of such particles are governed by the Euler-Lagrange equations in the Lagrangian formalism and Hamilton's equations in the Hamiltonian formalism, respectively. A wave, on the other hand, is non-localized, and instead describes a disturbance at any given point in space and time. This wave can be defined at any point in space and time by a wave function psi, which evolves according to a second-order partial differential equation known as the wave equation, where v corresponds to the propagation speed of the wave. In the case of a light wave, for instance, we have that v equals c, the speed of light. According to classical electromagnetic theory, we can write the equation of a plane wave, in other words, a wave that is periodic in both space and time, as follows, where k is the wave vector, which represents the rate of change of the phase of a wave with respect to each space coordinate, and omega, the angular frequency, which represents the rate of change of the phase with respect to time. Now that we have established the basic physics of particles and waves, we can discuss the double slit experiment. Suppose we have two slits in a wall, and another wall some distance behind this one. We will start by considering the following scenarios in the classical case. Suppose we cover one of the slits and send a wave through the other. Let the wave functions of the waves coming through the first and second slit be psi1 and psi2 respectively. In this instance, we get the following distribution of intensity. This corresponds to psi1 squared in the case of shining the beam through the first slit, and psi2 squared when shown through the second slit. If we now uncover both slits and send a wave through both slits simultaneously, what happens? Well, a natural conclusion might be that the two intensities should add up, so the resulting pattern is something like psi1 squared plus psi2 squared. However, this is actually not the case. Rather, we instead compute the intensity based on the combined wave psi1 plus psi2, meaning that the intensity actually follows the distribution psi1 plus psi2 whole squared. Because the distance from almost every other point on the back wall to the slits differs between the slits, the two waves psi1 and psi2 are out of phase. This means that they both constructively and destructively interfere with each other, creating areas of high and low intensity on the back wall, as visualized here. This all follows naturally from classical theory based on how we defined waves previously. Suppose instead that we send a beam of particles through the slits, with the particles going in varying directions, but all having the same energy. Suppose we then place particle detectors all along the back wall. If we cover one slit and allow the beam to pass through the other, we will find that the histogram produced resembles that of psi1 squared or psi2 squared in the wave case. If we now let both slits be exposed, we then expect that these two distributions should just add constructively, since each particle has a deterministic trajectory, and if a particle is, say, passing through slit 1, whether or not slit 2 is open should not affect the final destination. Consequently, we have that the final distribution resembles that of psi1 squared plus psi2 squared from before. One objection you might raise to this experiment is that particle interactions or deflections may also alter the trajectories of particles. However, to account for this, we can simply send a single particle at a time. Okay, so we've discussed what we expect classically. So what actually happens if we try this setup with, say, light? We can line the back wall with light-sensitive meters and then send a plane wave psi through the slits. As we expect classically, we get the exact same intensity patterns when one slit is covered or when none of the slits are covered. Okay, that agrees with our model so far. Now, suppose we decrease the intensity of the light beam significantly. According to our classical model, this should have no discernible impact on the behavior of the distributions. Suppose we now cover slit 2 and send the beam through slit 1. Unlike before, when we saw a continuous transfer of energy, we now see that the detectors are being activated in isolated bursts, implying that discrete packets of energy are being sent through, in other words, particles. These light particles are known as photons, and they have several important properties. all the photons emitted from the light source have the same energy and momentum. In fact, the energy of a photon is simply the momentum times the speed of light. Energy and momentum are also related to the wave properties of the light beam through the following relations. In other words, energy is proportional to frequency and momentum to wave number. The constant h bar is equal to h over 2 pi, where h is Planck's constant. Consequently, h bar is usually referred to as the reduced Planck's constant. Okay, getting back to our story, we have that light is made of particles, but surely that doesn't mean that the classical theory is completely busted, right? After all, when discrete phenomena occur in a short time span, they can behave in continuous fashion, so maybe explaining light as a beam of particles would be in line with classical theory. Well, let's unblock both slits and see what happens. As it turns out, the resulting histogram does not resemble psi1 squared plus psi2 squared as we would expect for particles, but rather psi1 plus psi2 whole squared, the pattern that we observed for waves. From these and similar observations, Born postulated that each photon is associated with a given wave function psi, and the probability density of finding the particle at position x was at the absolute value of psi of x squared. Note that we use probability density here since the position is continuous. This is known as the Born rule. Using this rule, we can explain the double slit experiment as follows. Each photon has the same energy and momentum, and the initial wave function is a plane wave corresponding to these values. After passing through the slits, the wave function interferes with itself, resulting in the interference pattern observed. When the position is measured, we essentially sample from this intensity distribution once and record the position of an event there. Consequently, over time, we observe that the photons map out the intensity distribution we observe. Furthermore, if the beam has a lot of photons, this pattern appears to be continuous, resulting in the continuous transfer of energy that we observed in the starting light wave case. Altogether, this experiment showcases the so-called wave-particle duality of photons, whereby depending on the experimental circumstances, photons can behave as waves or particles. Okay, so we have that photons can behave as both particles and waves. Is there anything else that exhibits this strange behavior? Well, as it turns out, any particles with mass also exhibit the same behavior. This was shown experimentally for electrons by Davison and Germer. In general, we have that for particles with momentum p, the associated wavelength, known as the DeBroglie wavelength, is given as h over p. This also helps explain why we do not observe wave-particle duality for everyday objects. Suppose, for instance, we have a billiard ball with momentum 1 kilogram meter per second. This means that the DeBroglie wavelength is 6.63 times 10 to the negative 34 meters, which is way smaller than what any of our instruments can measure interference patterns for. This concludes our brief foray into the motivations for quantum mechanics. In the next video, we will start getting into the actual math by talking about what the wave function actually represents and how we can extract information from it using different operators. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.